podcast world.
What's up, everybody?
You know what it is. You know where you're at. It's the Follow Through with Clips and Drew, the True Players Podcast, episode 316. If you're listening to us on Apple or on Spotify or on Google Play, if you're listening to us on Napster, do us a favor, rate us, review us, leave us a couple stars, leave us a middle finger, press that little red button. Also, speaking of red buttons, we're on YouTube. We're finally getting our YouTube stuff together. We're trying to get our subs up. We're working really hard to get this YouTube out. It's a lot of work, but we would appreciate it if you'd find your boys at Clips and Drew, the Follow Through NBA podcast. Look us up on there. And once again, speaking of red buttons, how about the red hot Houston Rockets right now, Drew? They have won 10 in a row. This band of misfits is crushing the NBA right now. Now, they've won 10 in a row, and it hasn't been the hardest of schedules, but within those 10 games, they have beaten Cleveland, they have beaten Sacramento, and they did beat OKC in that OT victory monster game the other night. So they are doing pretty good, and they're doing this without Baby Joker, without my guy, Alpi Şengün. But the emergence of Mr. Greenlight, Jalen Green, who, Drew, let me tell you his last 5 games, but 37, 27, 41, 26, 42. Jalen Green has been on an absolute tear. Not only has he been lighting it up offensively, but on the defensive side is where he's really making some strides. They have a swag. They have a cockiness about them. Like we've said many times, they got a dolt in the room with Fred VanVleet, and they got Ime running the show. And Drew, the cockiness that I'm talking about is these are the young bucks. These guys want all of the smoke. We've seen the beef that Jabari Parker had with Chris Dunn twice. We saw what Slam Whitmore and Devin Booker got into. We've seen Ime and LeBron get into it. And then the other night, we even see Tari Eason, who's not even playing, going on social media, calling out the Warriors to come out and play. I like this cockiness. These guys obviously DGAF. And I'm kind of on the Rockets right now, Drew. They're eyeing that 10th spot, that 10th and final playoff spot in the West by the Golden State Warriors. And then after what Draymond did once again the other night, which I don't even know if we're going to talk about, I'm going for the Rockets to get that 10th spot, Drew. What's your take on Mr. Greenlight, Jalen Green, and the Houston Rockets?
Yeah, it's a completely different style of basketball that they're playing right now, and I think that can't be overstated. Like, they lose Şengün, who was their best performer throughout the season, and then they just decided to just put all gas down, like all gas pedal, no brake. And I think it was kind of an obvious decision based on the rest of the team that they have, and then I think having Jabari Smith being the center just makes that super, super plausible for them to do that, because he is so long. I do think he grew a little bit in this offseason that might have gone under the radar for some folks, but I think he's pretty close to 6'11" right now, Jabari Smith.
Did I call him Parker? Did I call him Jabari Parker, by the way?
I almost did it right there.
Okay.
There's something about that. There's definitely a brain fart thing happening where Jabari Parker should still be in the NBA. He's not. He was the number 2 overall pick. He's not doing anything right now. So it's possible that you called him Parker. Jabari Smith Jr. is the guy.
Thank you.
And he is a huge reason why they're able to play at this pace. But of course, the headline is, this is now Jalen Green's team, right? Like they're running everything through him. He is making pretty good decisions, honestly, even though like the volume of shooting is quite high. Right now, I saw that throughout this stretch, he's at a 64% true shooting percentage, which is top 3 in the NBA.
Wow.
So, when you're getting that kind of efficiency level out of Jalen Green, that opens up so many doors for your offense, because he is we've talked about him in the past, but I think because of how poor Houston was during those first couple years, and honestly how inconsistent he was personally throughout those first couple years, that the explosive athlete side of him can get lost. Every once in a while, you'll catch him on a Sports Center top 10 or an Instagram highlight or something like that, where you go, oh, there it is. It looks like he's jumping off a trampoline. And there's something about his size, his length, but he does. When on the last episode we talked about Anthony Edwards and how powerful and explosive he is. Jalen Green is I would say equally as explosive, but he flies through the air. It looks kind of like a bird to me when he goes through.
It's all the air.
he can just he just got a head full of steam. He's so fast, he's so quick, and then that 1 foot jump that he has is ridiculously impressive. So it's all coming together for the Rockets right now. I think the more interesting part of this to me is the Shen piece, right? Because we knew that Jalen Green was a super athlete. We knew that, if he was going to be efficient like this, he could easily be a leading scorer in the NBA. I think some people actually had him down at the beginning of last year as potentially leading the league in scoring, right? Because given the fact that they didn't give a shit, he
Mm-hmm.
would have taken 35 shots a game. But you also remember, like at the beginning of the season, they had a run like this. I think they rattled off, I can't remember the number. I didn't have time to look it up before this, but I think they ran 10, 12, 13 in a row.
I was thinking 8.
I think it got to double digits, but they had a crazy run in the beginning. Even if it's eight, they just like, I remember it was really early days in the
Mm-hmm.
season, and they were like, in the top half of the West. So it's super exciting. But that let me get back to the Shengun thing. I'm very curious, what this means for how they'll move forward, because it's such contrasting styles of play that when they had Shengun on the floor, they'd slow things down a little bit. Obviously, you want to let him cook in the post. You want to get him the ball, at the top of the key of the elbow, and then run your offense through that. And they were able to play that way relatively successfully. Certainly for Shengun, it was successfully because his numbers were impressive. But now it's this run and gun thing. So I'm curious, because we do expect Shengun to be back. I don't know how fast he'll be back, but I'm very intrigued about how it will look and what they will decide to do when he eventually returns to the court. The exciting part about what's happening is they are immediately, like, they're ramping up, right? Like 10 in a row. You've mentioned that the Warriors really, have not hit that sort of level during this season at all. They've never really had that, 10 in a row kind of a swing. They've been, winning, losing, and then you still have all the Draymond stuff. Steph had tears in his eyes the other night, but still comes out and hits a massive shot at the end of the game, and they end up, winning that game against a rowdy Orlando Magic team. Uh, I can understand why people would want to see Houston in the play-in over this Golden State Warriors team. I still think, based on what the remaining games are for both of these squads, specifically the Warriors and the Rockets, that the Warriors will hold on to the 10 seed. The Rockets have one of the top 12 hardest schedules remaining. And, it's whatever, 10 or 11 games left. But during this 10 run, this 10 game run, they haven't necessarily ran into the best teams. You
No.
outlined some of the better wins, but that Cleveland win came without a Donovan Mitchell playing in that game. And so we'll see. It'll be put to the test. You know what I mean? Like these next 10 will be vital for both. And you can tell, at least I can, from the emotionality that the Warriors are playing with, that they don't want to fall out of this. They desperately still want to be in the 10 seed. They don't want to just say, okay, let's pack it in and we'll fall out and we'll go to the 11 seed and let these young guys do it. I think the Warriors do want to hold on to this, and I think they will. But it's certainly exciting. And for those folks that, much like myself, I don't catch a lot of Houston Rocket games. I catch them every so often, and kind of in between other important games that I want to watch, I'll throw them on because they're fun and exciting. But certainly turn them on right now because it is electric watching them play the way that they're playing.
They're fun, man. And I'm not saying they're going to compete for the championship this year at all, but when
Sure.
you're talking about Shengun and what they're going to be doing moving forward, I think they need to take a really hard look at what they actually have here. Like they have all this raw talent in Amen and in Slam Whitmore and Shengun and Jalen Green's coming up. And I had this conversation yesterday down at the beach with a basketball friend of mine that I like. And I think some guys like Jalen Green, again, he's 22, like Anthony Edwards, 22, like Ja Morant, all these young guys. And I think Silas was kind of a pushover a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to do what we got, what I want to do as far as the players, the kind of walk all over him. And then you get rid of like the trash, the shit that's congesting you up with Kevin Porter Jr. and whatnot. And you bring in Ime, who holds players accountable. And if you're not doing what he wants you to be doing, especially on the defensive end, your ass is going to be right next to Boban on the bench, right? I think they're really well coached and bringing out the best talent that we all know Jalen Green is good, right? Like we know he's good, but that stuff looked messy last season. When you bring in guys like Fred VanVleet, who, again, can control the show. When you bring in the bad guy and Dylan Brooks, who will be the Draymond Green of your team, it looks like everybody wants to be Draymond on that team. Like, again, they want all the smoke. And I think they have something really special with Şengün, and if they could really figure out the Şengün Jalen Green thing. The funny thing is, it's a month ago we're talking about, Bridges, Jalen Green to Brooklyn for Bridges, right? And now it's like
Yeah.
Jalen Green's off the board. Nobody wants, you're not getting rid of Jalen Green. They need to wait this out to see how good Jalen can be, and see if they have something like a Jamal Murray and Joker, an off version of this. Can they make this happen? I got a quick question for you, because I asked, I really want to do on this show, I wanted a comparison to Jalen Green, like another player that was like Jalen. And the three people I asked, I won't give their names, but one's an NBA cat, and then one of just a couple hoop heads. And the first two couldn't name one. They're like, there's nobody that I can compare him to, because, he's a different kind of player. It wouldn't have been like, you remember how we said Norman Powell is like Vinny, he's the air
Yeah.
fryer. And Jalen Green, I couldn't find one. And you could be like, he's kind of like a Ja, and you're like, no, I'm looking for somebody better. So I hit up our boy Scotty with our basketball news. I'm like, Scotty, text him really fast. Give me one comparison to Jalen Green. He's like, easy. He said Latrell Sprewell. And I said, damn, that's why I hit you up, bro. It's a perfect comparison. I think Jalen's got better handles and whatnot. It's a different era, different time.
Yeah.
Sprewell 6'5", Jalen Green 6'4". But I'm like, I like that comparison. He actually put some thought in it. Do you think of anybody off the top of your head that Jalen? Because normally people have comparisons. You know what I mean? Like you compare a couple. Jalen was a tough one for me.
Yeah, it is a tough one. I think Malik Monk is the first name that comes to my mind. Like it just because Malik is also like an underrated athlete, but size wise, skill level, shot making ability. I think Malik Monk is kind of a similar player there. I will say Jalen has a tidbit more explosiveness to a game at this point. But Malik, dude, he can dunk it however you want. He can hit a pull up three. He can get in transition. He's got really solid handle. I got to see him on the Lakers for a short stint. He's doing very well in Sacramento in his time there. And I think he actually will get a pretty decent paycheck this offseason. He's going to be a free agent.
He deserves it.
I think he's a free agent this year in a class that should be a relatively shallow free agency class. So that's a good one. Again, I'm sticking with my Lakers, but there's an element of, and this is a stretch, but Shannon Brown comes to mind. And if you'll remember Shannon Brown, that dude could really jump. He didn't have the offensive capabilities, the technical abilities that Jalen Green possesses, but with just an athletic ability, when you look at a guy that size and all of a sudden you're like, that guy shouldn't be able to jump that high or run that fast. I mean, some of the highlights that Shannon Brown, the best highlight for him, unfortunately, just didn't count. The one crazy block. But Malik Monk, I think, is the closest one I can come to mind.
And if you have a minute, Shannon Brown's got a crazy mixtape too.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Look at his mixtape. I think Jalen's way more skilled than Shannon, but it is what it is.
I agree.
Yeah, I think this is just another testament to this AAU culture that's coming up as well. You know what I mean? Like, they're extremely raw. Most of these kids are extremely raw. They've never been like super well coached. You know what I mean? And again, being held accountable, teaching these kids how to play within a system. And I think once you have the savvy vet in Van Vliet, and you have the coach that's willing to, make you a big part of the system, but you have to play, you have to play the right side. You have to play right within the system.
I think there should be a distinction between coaching when we talk about this, though, because I will say that on individual skill level, these guys are very well drilled. And in order to be very well drilled, that does require coaching, that does require, learning and taking lessons and practicing, right? Like, you just don't become this skilled and technically sound as a player at his young of an age without putting in the work there. So there's a coaching component to that, but I think you hit on the most important piece that is not coached at the level that it should be at youth basketball, which is the team atmosphere. Nobody seems to be doing that. Everyone wants to be playing one-on-one. Everyone wants to be able to showcase what they can do with the ball against the defender and try to beat their man and make that guy fall over, or cross him up and get into a fadeaway, cross him up and get into your Euro step and get to the basket and all that good stuff. And obviously, when you're explosive like him, cross him up and fucking yam on somebody, right? Like, so I do think there has to be a distinction there, because these kids, that are coming in, like Jalen Green, are so technically sound and beyond what we would normally expect out of rookies or young 20 somethings, but they do lack that just inherent knowledge that we expect basketball players in the NBA to have about how to move, how to cut, how to play defense as a unit. And that's hopefully what someone like Ime Udoka can bring to this very young roster. Jalen Green, Cam Whitmore, the rest of them, Jabari, they got so many young, talented players there. I do think that they may have the basis of a good coach understanding and the building of a culture to get them advanced to the next level, right? I still think it's incredible to me that there's 11 teams in the Western Conference that have winning records right now. And in a season where we knew that the West would beat up on themselves, Houston has a winning record, dude. Like it's incredible that they've taken such a leap in just this one season. So it is definitely tip of the cap to Ime, to Fred,
Yeah.
to Dylan, and to the rest of the guys that said, you know what, we don't want to fuck around anymore. It feels like the whole team is like, I think we're done with this whole messing around stage. Like let's actually try to put something together here and do something because we have this potential. I think every once in a while you look around and you go, damn, like why can't we? Why
Mm.
can't we make this 10 seed? Why can't we make this play in and actually get into the postseason and then build off of that? And then next year, everyone should be even more aware and a little bit more scared of us when they come into Houston. It's not going to be, oh, cool, we're gonna have a 20-point victory over Houston. We'll go have a great dinner. We'll go do some extracurricular activities. Those will be nameless. But that's kind of what the vibe was every time you visited Houston since Harden left. And I think that might be changing.
I just remember at the beginning of the season when we posted on our page, there was a picture of Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet sitting courtside in an empty arena. VanVleet was talking to him, right?
Yeah,
And Jalen Green was soaking it in. And I'm like, that's so important to have that vet on your team. And they got, SGA had CP, Sam Cassell's, the Drew Holidays, those kind of guys. They're so important for these young cats, even like Pat Bev and Anthony Edwards, little stuff like that. You need those OGs. And
I didn't mean to cut you off.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the veteran leadership experience that you're talking about will come in super handy when Şengün returns. Whether that be at the back end of this year when he comes back in a week or whatever, or if they're going to say, well, we'll hold off and we'll bring you back next year. There's going to need to be some veteran leadership when he's back on the floor and Jalen doesn't get those 30 shots a game or 25 shots, and he's going to have to take that in stride to realize that maybe we do have a mini Jamal Murray Jokic thing happening. And within that, both Jokic and Jamal Murray are unselfish at times, right? Sometimes Jamal takes 25 shots, other times he takes 16 shots or 14 shots, right? And you have to be able to live with both of those things for the greater good of the team. So that's where that leadership from Ime, but also the veteran guys will have to come and talk with Jalen and have that, that understanding. Like, we know that you can go score 30 points, 35 points a game, but we actually want to win here. And that may mean, you dropping back down to 19, 20, 24 points a game.
I think they should just steal the blueprint for Denver, because if you could put
100%.
Jabari in the Aaron Gordon spot, you know what I mean, and you just and I think Amen hasn't played enough this year for people to really see how talented defensively he is. If they can all lock in on defense, I mean, Dylan plays defense,
Yeah.
Jalen Green has gotten better, and if Jabari can do his thing, Amen. I mean, they're long, and then you just got these wild cards in Slam Whitmore. I mean, dude, Cam was going into we couldn't believe he got picked up so late, and then
20th.
Right, and then he's playing, and then he's in the G League, and then he drops 2 games with 30 or whatever the hell he did in a row. Like, he was going off. They have a super talented team. So to what you were saying, like, if you sit back in that locker room and look at all of this talent, it's actually a blessing. It's a good problem to have. It's figuring it out and get everybody on the same page. I think they need one more vet, not named Dylan Brooks. I think they need one more vet in there. I like Dylan, and I think he's going to come in handy.
Well, they have Steven Adams. And
Facts.
this is a
Forgot about
super
that.
underrated thing that happened during this whole, transitionary period, because Steven Adams ain't playing anymore. And who knows, maybe his knees are just done. And so maybe he doesn't get on the floor. Maybe that's just what it is. But my guess is he'll be back next year. And, not to say that Steven Adams is the, the end all be all,
No,
because Memphis pretty much wrote him out and wrote him off and said, you know what, what did you say? Where are you from again? I can't remember. I don't know what you're talking about, Steven. Um, you know, but maybe he can also provide more than just the leadership, the on court leadership, right? Because I think that there is a piece that's missing there for them, right? Like when you have Şengün in the lineup, that's great, but then you come out, Landale's been pretty good for them as well.
mm-hmm.
But having another big guy like Steven Adams in the mix could be a kind of an interesting look for them and what they need.